Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azawi. Like most countries of the Middle East, Iraq had a long history of corruption. That 2003 invasion has catapulted Iraq almost to the top position of the most corrupt country in the world. Stuart Bowen, the American Inspector General who was responsible for the reconstruction of Iraq, called it the second insurgency. With corruption sapping Iraq's energy and casting doubt on its future recovery prospect, how will Iraqis succeed in rebuilding their country without expunging this cancer from their society?
A video uploaded on the internet and an embarrassment for Iraqi ministry aides. The footage allegedly shows Trade Ministry officials from the Prime Minister's own Dawah political party partying with young women. The video has come to symbolize the endemic corruption plaguing Iraq. The Ministry of Trade has been at the center of recent corruption allegations. The minister, Abdul Falah al-Sudani, was accused of making millions by selling expired food products as well as food aid. He resigned at the end of May and then was arrested trying to leave the country. He was recently released on bail. Iraq's anti-corruption committee estimates losses from corruption to be in the billions of dollars. It's investigated some 12,000 complaints of government corruption. But few high-profile officials have ever been successfully prosecuted. Hazem al-Sha'lan, a former Minister of Defense, fled Iraq in 2005 after being charged and convicted of embezzling millions of dollars in bogus contracts. Former Electricity Minister Ayham el-Samara'i was held on corruption charges in Baghdad's heavily fortified Green Zone, but escaped to the US in 2006 with the help of a private security company. Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has said his government is determined to fight corruption at all levels. But that may be difficult, as well as dangerous. A member of Iraq's anti-corruption committee was recently shot dead in the streets of Baghdad. Critics of al-Maliki say he has not made uncovering corruption easy. In 2007, he reinstated an old Saddam law allowing ministers to stop corruption investigations. Government officials have been using this law to sue journalists and muzzle the media. Just recently, ex-Minister of Trade al-Sudani filed lawsuits against local newspapers for printing allegations of corruption. Al-Maliki's own intelligence service launched a court action in May demanding $1 million in damages from the London-based Guardian newspaper for describing his government as authoritarian.
To examine the extent of corruption and what can Iraqis do about it, I am joined from Baghdad by Fawzi al-Hariri, Iraq's Minister of Industry and Minerals, and from Amman, Mustafa al-Hiti, a member of the Iraqi Parliament, and from Washington by Samuel Parker, Deputy Director of Iraq Programs at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Let me start by having two perspectives, asking the same question first to Fawzi al-Hariri. A very simple question. What is the level and extent of corruption in Iraq?
Thank you. I believe at the present time it's much less than it was a year ago, and it's less than it was 2 years ago. There is an agreed level of corruption that exists, and it's healthy for a government and for a country to deal with a problem by, first of all, admitting the problem exists, and we do. But we believe the levels of its extent are exaggerated, and we are actively working both inside the government and with the legislative arm, which is the representatives at the Council of Representatives, to deal with these issues, be it legally or be it through legislations.
You say it has been exaggerated. In that case, you must take issue with Transparency International, when for the last few years had put Iraq perhaps at the top of the most corrupt countries in the world. Just 2 years ago, it was number 3. If I'm not mistaken, now it's either number 2 or number 1. Let me ask the same question to Mustafa al-Hiti. It's number 2, Mustafa al-Hiti.
Since you are going to ask the same question, please notice that during the 2006, the report of Baker Hamilton estimated the corruption in Iraq about 7.5 billion, costing the Iraqi government. Now, as we said, it is just behind Somalia. So the problem is very big. Really, we don't know until now how big is again, because in 2006, the Baker-Hamilton studies show that. Now we don't know. It may be bigger. Although the minister said it could be less, I think is much more now than before.
The Inspector General responsible for the reconstruction of Iraq, Stuart Bowen, called it the second insurgency in Iraq after the formal insurgency, Sam. How convenient is it for Iraqis to say that the invasion brought this corruption for us?
Well, I think that's a bit of an oversimplification. Certainly, corruption was endemic in Iraq under sanctions, and certainly with regard to the oil for food program, and that Saddam had really no means to get revenue other than illicit means, and therefore, particularly in food contracts with international companies, had a whole range, a whole network of middlemen and sketchy dealers, and a very complicated kickback scheme that has carried over to present day. And you see that recently with the resignation and arrest of the trade minister, who continued to benefit from those networks. But the U.S. is responsible to a large degree as well. The U.S. came in 2003, and the CPA proceeded to govern Iraq, acting like there was no state president at all, and created a whole bunch of new institutions, ignored the Iraqi state, and then when it left, it transferred sovereignty immediately, almost overnight, to an unelected Iraqi government that then had access to literally billions of dollars in Iraqi government revenue.
Sam, if that was during an unelected official, Fawzi al-Hariri, right now the Iraqi government enjoys at least the benefit of the election, and most of the political parties are involved in this political process. And yet, al-Maliki, the Iraqi prime minister, is on record saying that his hand is tied behind his back simply because he cannot fight corruption. Most of the corrupt ministers that he knows about, they are protected by the political sectarian quota system.
Well, there are two angles to that, really. I mean, the gentleman highlighted some very important issues with the corruption, which we inherited from the previous systems and the last American occupation. And Iraq is going to work with the new U.S. administration to attempt to find out what happens to the billions of dollars that were contracted out for services which the Iraqi population never received. That is one angle of it. The other angle, the internal politics of Iraq, which again was exacerbated by the presence of terrorism, by the presence of militias, that some of them were also part of the government, also tied the government's hand as well as the legislator's hand to be able to deal with the problems in a progressive way. Remember, the present government has been in government for about just over 3 years, and so has the parliament. And the parliament, being the watchdog, only realistically activated its actions, which we welcome.
I will come to the role of parliament, since we have a member of parliament, Mustafa Al-Hiti, but you heard the minister saying that we are only in power for 3 years, and the insurgency kind of hampered our position and efforts in order to combat corruption.
Mr. Jassim, I disagree with both gentlemen regarding that the corruption in Iraq is epidemic. I would like for both gentlemen can explain for me how it comes that if there is a big corruption in Iraq in the past regime, how it comes that Iraq was the leading country in education and health and in the services infrastructure during the 80s. What makes the situation worse really is the embargo imposed upon Iraq, which makes the situation really for the services going down, but Iraq was the leading country. Usually when we really want to get rid of our mistake, we will hang our faults and our failing upon the past regime. I am not defending the past regime from its political aspects, but at least for the what's happening now in Iraq regarding the corruption, I think the invasion is responsible for that and have my proof. In any legal system,
and I agree with that.
Laws and legal system need to be protected by the police forces. Once the invasion comes to Iraq, the dissolution of the Iraqi army and the policemen make all the militias to feel free to go everywhere in Iraq and to steal and to do all the corruption. Second, regarding, I agree partially with Sam when he said that the political blocks regarding the sectarian kind of government, the blocks were so big really, and they were hiding their, what you call it, mistakes or corruption. Just a few months ago, when those blocks start to be what you call fragmented to small pieces. And we said, and Iraqi say, usually in the saying, the robbery will be found when the thieves start fighting between them. What happened really in Iraq, that those political parties start to fight each other.
Sam, Iraq has established a watchdog above and beyond the parliament. There is the Integrity Commission, what they call Lajnat al-Nazaha. Even that committee has been hampered by not given enough powers, and the members, some of the members are being threatened. Are these mechanisms sufficient to combat, to stem the tide of this corruption?
No, I don't think so. In addition to the Hayat Nazaha, there is also the Board of Supreme Audit, which is a much older Iraqi institution that had a fairly good track record in the older Iraqi regime. But yeah, I mean, in the Hayat Nazaha, the Integrity Commission was appointed by Paul Bremer and CPA. But no, I mean, I think it's really realistic only, as the minister said, that the parliament or the Council of Representatives is really the key player in this because it has the power of the purse and can effectively deny funds to corrupt ministries and can exercise a much more robust, because it can deny funds, can be much more robust in monitoring and oversight of government expenditure. Parliament
has asked for several ministers to be questioned, including the oil minister and several other ministers, and so far the political backup behind them, the political bosses, they are refusing for these ministers to be questioned.
I believe no one has the right to refuse. I mean, this is a constitutional matter, and any minister requested for questioning by the parliament has to appear within the framework agreed between the two executive and legislative bodies. That agreement has been reached. There were meetings taking place in Baghdad during last week by the highest political leadership, that is the head of the executive, head of the legislative, head of the presidential council, to agree on a basic way of how we can coordinate this, and it will take place, it will happen, and it should happen. And we welcome the fact that our brothers in the Council of Representatives are taking this role on, and we believe this will enhance our commitment. The point I would like to make is that what I said earlier is that Iraq should be proud that we are actually admitting we have a problem, and that is a real important step towards finding a solution.
The fact that the Iraqi government has admitted that the corruption is simply because
there is
the
a
evidence,
level of corruption.
Because simply the evidence is so overwhelming, you cannot hide it. That's why you are admitting it. But let me listen to Mustafa.
No, absolutely.
Hold on
that
just a second, please.
True.
Give a chance to Mustafa Al-Hiti. Go ahead, Mustafa.
Well, let me just say regarding the meeting which was held the last week between the different committees. They want really a framework, but the framework which was really put in the front of the what you call it, the committee or the people in the meeting is in fact just make the kind of a questionnaire really behind, and it takes time. They want to start it by questionnaire, then and so and so and so. I don't think the constitution is so clear that some members of the parliament, 25, the formal things, then you can question anybody. Questioning any minister, it is not what you call it, a crime for him. This is needed by the constitution itself. But I think it is clear now that there is a high corruption in the government of Iraq, and this needs to be really supervised by the parliament. Maybe the question why we are so late.
Let me get a response from Sam, and then I'll go back to Fawzi Al-Hariri. Sam, go ahead.
I think what you say is right. It's only because the corruption has become so flagrant and exposed in the media that the government is being forced to take action on it. But look, that's how democracy works. I mean, if you look at the January provincial elections, almost all of the incumbents, many of whom were corrupt, were thrown out. And hopefully, in the coming elections in January, the more corrupt members and the people responsible for this corruption we're seeing now will be held to account and thrown out of office as well. So, you know, the media has an important role, civil society has an important role, and this is natural, and it's actually a very positive sign for Iraq that the leaders are feeling this kind of pressure.
Sam, that is the point I was trying to make. And the fact that we agree that there is a problem and it's been publicized, and we're not taking anything away from our commitment to actually do something with it. I totally agree, and that is the point I was trying to make.
Let me turn the table on you, Mustafa Al-Hiti. You are a member of parliament.
Yes.
You keep complaining that you don't have enough powers. But as members, I'm not talking about you directly, but also as members of parliament, explain to us the former speaker of the Iraqi parliament, Mahmoud al-Mashhadani, when he was ousted. How is it possible that his monthly salary pension is about 40,000? It's almost $500,000 a year. Not even the president of the United States, when he leaves the Oval Office, gets $500,000. How did you guys vote for such a pension?
Well, look, this is not what you call it, it's just for al-Mashhadani. This big money, you say 40,000, is not just for him, it is for the bodyguards. There is a law in the parliament, and it is the same for the government. It is not new, really, and it's not just for al-Mashhadani. Every, what you call it, position, even the prime minister, if he is resigned, or the president of Iraq. But this is, I mean, half of the salary, this is for the guards. He should have, by the law, about 120. I am not defending al-Mashhadani, but this is what we call it, the way in Iraq, the things is going like that.
Stay with
but
me,
let
Mustafa
us go back
Al-Hiti.
to the corruption.
Mustafa Al-Hiti, stay with me. Let's talk about the guards. Mahmoud Uthman, your colleague from the Kurdistan Coalition, he was on record that only about 10% of Iraqi parliamentarians, they used the number of guards allocated to them. Each member is allocated about 30 guards. Most of them, the majority, he says, almost 90%, they use about 5 or 10. And the rest, the salary for these guards, they pocket them. And the same thing applies to the cars. So here we are, Parliament, supposed to watch the corruption within Iraqi government. Most members, they are also their hands in the till.
Well, look, it could be for him, but most all the parliament member, and you know, even 2 or 3 days ago, one of the head of the political mass was murdered and while he is praying. It means the level of violence is still in Iraq, and the 30 guards, you know, it even, I cannot say it is enough or not enough, but the situation still needs guards. So once the situation improves, maybe we can reduce the number of guards. And even the salary of those guards, it was less than the salary of any policeman. It was 450.
If I want to make a point that in addition to that, obviously there are different varying views of whether that is a very high pay or not, but I believe every member of parliament or a representative has too many official duties to undertake, and that salary represents the complete package of expense and other fundamental requirements, and public obviously public services and public work also requires spending, and that is very important to give a member of parliament that independency to be able to do the work. As for the head of the speaker, obviously he is one of the 3 highest ranking positions in the country, and it is the duty of the country to provide a reasonably comfortable retirement for an individual who had taken that role.
Except for Fawzi Al-Hariri, most of Iraqis are living below the poverty line. Poverty has become endemic. And then when you pay somebody, hold on just a second, please, hold on. When you pay somebody who was a Speaker of the House for, just less than 2 years with no great accomplishment, and a cantankerous speaker, and dare I say perhaps incompetent, it rubs the Iraqis the wrong way. Sam, what is the level, what is the impact of corruption on the progress of Iraqi industry and agriculture in order to come out of this paralysis?
Oh, it's absolutely crippling, if for no other reason than it's a really huge impediment to international investment. Companies want to come in and do business in Iraq, but there's no rule of law, there's no framework, there's all sorts of bribes and kickbacks they have to pay to do business. So it makes it almost impossible for Iraq to join the international economy unless there's serious progress made on this.
If we are to do this episode next year, Fawzi Al-Hariri, will Iraq come out of position number 2 and inch forward to the position it used to be, 67, 68? back before 2003?
Yes, I am confident that that is the way. As I said, I believe the level is much less than it was last year and much less than it was the previous year. As far as the investment point is concerned, that we have sufficient legislation in place to provide a reasonably secured environment for a foreign investor to come in. If not, at least it doesn't require a local partner to be part of that investment. And we are seeing encouraging
framework
signs
is one
by
thing, but
hundreds. But that is the situation, you see. We are seeing, Sam, hundreds of investors coming into the country we didn't see 6 months ago or a year ago.
Mustafa, without wiping out corruption out of Iraq, how are you going to attract investors to come and help you rebuild Iraq?
That's why I'm saying I don't agree completely that with the existing parliament and the government, changes will occur in Iraq unless the next election, the parliamentary election, change the faces, as at least did the local election. I don't think changes will occur, because what we want really, it is just not the change, the corruption, the financial one. We have what you call the managerial level. You have to change the laws which make most all the expert people leaving Iraq, or they left Iraq because
are you saying the people in top position right now, they are not qualified to run the government?
Yes,
right.
Yes, they are, and we knew that because, as I said, because either because they said they are Baathists or they allied to the past regime, or to a reason or another, what I call it a cold war between the political parties. They make these sectarian kind of ministries like what you call it a political spoils. So each party want to, what you call it, nominate his people.
The people at the top are not qualified simply because they are political appointees.
We are obviously in most governments in the region are political appointees. This is the present system. This is the best way that we can move, at least in Iraq, to keep the existing political process flowing for the next few years. Are they the perfect choices? Some positions they are. Others possibly we could do better. We definitely require a good development of middle management capabilities and a proactive bureaucratic system that can run some of the issues. We have problems in those, at those levels.
Mr. Jassim, just a short point.
Go ahead.
I want just to put it in front of you. Well, the political entities which come to the really ruling the country, they didn't bring the elite or expert people from their constituent. The best of Sunni or Shiite Muslim or Kurdish, if they came to the government, it means, or ruling the country, it will be the best Iraqis come to the government. They, before in the election, they gave the credit of their, what you call a sectarian movement, and once they come to the government, they give it to their parties. They didn't return it to the accreditation.
You made that point very, very clear, Mustafa Al-Hiti. Let me close with Sam Parker. Let me go back to the terminology used by Stuart Bowen when he said, this is the second insurgency. He is actually right. This corruption is fueling resentment and anger by Iraqis. They are taking on the Iraqi government.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's a systematic plundering of the Iraqi national treasure that belongs by rights to the people. And, yeah, I think it's going to be a generational effort to really reform it. There are just, because Iraq has so much wealth there for the taking, there are lots of vested interests that are going to continue to intimidate people and push and keep real reform from happening. So, we can't look for success overnight, but, inshallah, with the broader progress of the democratic experiment in Iraq, hopefully 10, 20 years down the road, we'll see a positive evolution on this problem, but it's going to take some time.
I will add my inshallah to your inshallah, Sam Parker. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Fawzi Al-Hariri, Mustafa Al-Hiti, gentlemen, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq. To access the show and to send us your comments, please go to aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, have a great week.